Welcome back, everybody, to the Omniverse Comics Guide podcast. We are your Omniverse Comics Guide guys. Everybody that's hanging out with us, welcome back to the show. And if it's your first time, welcome for the first time on Twitch, YouTube, podcast platforms that you like, Apple, Spotify. We're everywhere. Don't forget to hit that rate and subscribe button that gives a thumbs up, or the little bell that you can ring to notify you that there are new episodes available. We appreciate every shout out you give us. And don't forget, of course, most importantly, visit the omniversecomics.guide for all of your reading reviews, all of your reading orders. We've got videos there, all the podcasts and archives. It's all there. There's so much to look out for every week on the omniversecomics.guide. So definitely check it out. And thank you for joining us again. My friend Dave.
Hello.
How the hell are you?
How's it going, dude? You good?
I'm good. I'm so much better. It's almost like last week's podcast just took everything out of me, because right after that show, I was bedridden for like 3 days straight. The pressure in my head, I could have really used some of that stuff you like to take, Magic Mind.
Oh.
I was thinking about it. I'm like, that damn Magic Mind stuff could really come in handy, keeping me healthy and alert and rested.
Though I have to say, dude, you covered really, really well. You covered really well last week. I literally wouldn't have noticed. Even watching it back, I was looking like, you don't seem like you're unwell. But yeah, do you know what would help you feel better? Is a little bit of matcha, a little bit of Bacopa Monnieri, huh? You know what I'm saying? A little bit of the old ashwagandha. These are all ingredients in Magic Mind. I don't know what this stuff is. The whole thing is that it works. It works for me, and I recommend giving it a shot. Because it literally is a shot. It's a shot in a tiny little bottle that you have every morning. And it does make you feel better. It makes you feel more focused. It makes me sleep better. It's such a weird thing to be able to feel more awake in the day and feel like I can sleep in the evening, because that ain't me. If you want that focus as well, like getting stuff done, I know that I like the way we talk about the stuff I do, and there's a crazy amount of stuff going on, and I jump off work and I do all the Omniverse stuff. But even if you're literally just doing a 9 to 5, that's still like, that can be difficult. If you're having a busy life, whatever you've got going on in your life, like it's better if you're present. So take some Magic Mind and it feels 100%. Like you're there. Especially when you're a little under the weather. Because you are friends of the Omniverse, if you go onto Magic Mind's website, which is magicmind.com, you can get 20% off when you use the code Omniverse20. So make sure you mention the Omniverse, because you'll get yourself a nice little discount.
I like it. There you go. Well, everybody, we're back to our top 10s. We haven't done a top 10 in a little bit, but we know that people love a good top 10 list. And we're going to try one that I don't think we've ever given this one a shot yet.
No. Well, you suggested this. And I thought like, whoa, that's nice and left field.
Was it? Okay. It would have been appropriate for last week's show, since it fell on what, but
Do you know what? This topic is an all year rounder, It's not reserved for one day.
That's what I think.
And true types know it.
Without further ado, this week's top 10 is going to be our top 10 love stories.
Yeah.
Now, comic books, it's sometimes, obviously, it's a plot in almost every comic book movie that you watch, television show. There's always some sort of love angle, love interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some of the really, really great love stories, when you sit back and think about it, as a comic book fan and longtime reader, as many of us watching and listening to this are, we would agree that love stories are a very, very key element to the entire art form.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think people have historically always thought of comics as being a very male medium, but love stories are always thought of being something that is more aimed at females, historically. Right. But comics have the fighting, they've got the history, they've got the love stories, they've got the going out of space, they've got all sorts of stuff in there, and like love stories are a massive part, like you say. I always think like everything's a love story technically, apart from maybe Predator 1. Maybe they got it on afterwards. I don't know. They couldn't have done, could they? No. So yeah, Everything's a love story for the most part. 98% of stories are love stories, and comics are no different. They're riddled with them.
Yeah. And there's some doozies throughout the all of the different formats of publishing, universes. One thing I've left out, which I've talked about plenty, is Silver Surfer. That would be my favorite love story within comics, but I've talked about that quite enough to have to hit you guys over the head with it. So if it's not listed, it's not because it hasn't been remembered.
I get that must be a heartbreaker for you, man, because that is perfect. That's perfect for this.
It is, and it kind of inspired the list. But I've listed it so many different ways. You guys know how I feel about it. That would make the top of my list. It's my turn to go first. All right. I'll start off with this one because I wanted to put it on my end of the year list, and I listed it as a alternate. So my first pick is very obvious. It's going to be Batman and Catwoman from Tom King. Had it as an alternative potential for the top 20 because I really enjoyed this book. It's a little controversial. It's the Black Label ending to Tom King's Batman run. Right, this would have been his, I guess, official 100 issues or so. You could be a first-time reader and know enough peripherally, I think, about Batman and Catwoman to appreciate this. But the more invested you've been in the characters throughout their history, throughout the mediums, this will read better. Mm-hmm. The tricky part about this book, I will say, I'm not making a great sales pitch for it, but that it does do a time jump. It tells 3 different stories at the same time. Which adds a little bit of gravitas to the relationship of Bruce and Selina at different stages of their relationship, when they first meet, when they've known each other for a few years, later on in life, etc., etc. So it has that charm to really, Tom King really cares clearly about the relationships and love stories in comics. If any of us have read his stuff, he leans into that heavily.
Yeah.
The banter between Selina and Batman on like their first meetings, that passion that they have that is wrong, but they can't help it. And it's Batman's biggest weakness is this love that he has for her because he sees so much potential in Selina, but she also is his biggest temptation. I love seeing a character who's so disciplined give into his passion and his lust and this is the cat that
got his cream.
Him. Yeah. Right. So there's this one moment it's near the end of the book. It doesn't really spoil much, but it's just their banter where they're going back and forth. Why do you dress up as a cat? Why do you dress up as a bat? And she says something. She goes, I'm not scared of you. And I think that's what attracts me because I know you're not. So why do you know I'm not scared? I do. And then she responds, does that scare you? And yes, it does. It's just this ongoing back and forth of. She goes, "Are you scared of cat?" And he goes, "Shouldn't I be?" She goes, "No, everybody likes cats." He goes, "That's right, because they're soft." Like this sexual tension that they create between them.
And they piss on you.
It's very palpable.
I always get peed on by cats. I don't know why they tend to pee on me.
I mean,
I'm territory. So now I'm wondering about those two and what they really get up to. From my perspective, there's some questions there.
Right? It's a very passionate, animalistic relationship when they're in their other identities, and then of course there's the Bruce and Selina aspect of their relationship too.
Yeah.
So the cat and mouse game, pun intended. Friendship, the naughtiness, the intelligence, the chase, the hard to get. Will they, won't they? You hope they can figure it out. And then in certain futures, they do.
Do you know if this was going to be the ending and then DC kind of went, yeah, and then they switched it to Black Label?
I don't know.
No? I don't know.
I don't know officially, but what's cool about this one is that it also throws in the animated series timeline. So it's really a culmination of all of the potential realities of Batman and Catwoman.
12 issues, right?
12 issues, yeah. A worthwhile read if you want to get to the, see how it kind of ends in Tom King's mind.
Shall I go with mine?
Yes.
This is my first choice. You can read it in a number of different ways, but it was originally published in Daredevil Volume 2 or Daredevil 1998, numbers 9 to 15. It's Daredevil Parts of a Whole. It's also collected in this Marvel Knights omnibus. I don't know why they called it Marvel Knights, seeing as it's predominantly Daredevil and there's one Punisher story. They could have just called it Marvel Knights Daredevil, maybe. I don't know. Does it matter? It's the second storyline in the Marvel Knights era of Daredevil. So the first storyline was the Kevin Smith run, which was Guardian Devil, and that was a great opener. Like, that was a great opener. It looked amazing with Quesada and Palmiotti on the art and Kevin Smith on the script, and he actually finished a story for once, which is amazing. And it had all sorts in it. One of my favorite villains in it. La la la. We're not talking about that one. We're talking about this one. I mean, there are love story elements in that as well. I mean, there's loads of love story stuff in Daredevil. The guy's a tart. But this one, he's introduced to... Well, he is, isn't he? He does all right, doesn't he, eh, Matt? Doesn't he? Lucky blighter. So in this one, he's introduced to a new character. And it's... Well, there's some relevance to now because that character is called Echo. So this is the story that introduces Echo. Now, I don't know if you've seen the TV series. I know I haven't, and nor will I ever. Fuck that shit. But this story is amazing. I never want to see that too. I saw something about that and that she's got like different powers and all sorts. Like, no, it's like, no, stop it. This is Echo, and I don't think there's been another great Echo story since. I mean, she's been used fairly well in New Avengers, but she kind of got, it was almost like they forgot she was on the team basically at one point, which was almost made a point of in itself. But he does really well for himself. But the interesting thing with this is, unlike a lot of the women he's been involved with in the past, because like Elektra obviously was like so bad for him. She's a murderer, she's an assassin. And then there's Typhoid, who's really bad for him. And she's a murderer as well, with a multiple personality disorder in the way that they do that in fiction. They're always really bad for him. But there's Karen, and Karen was kind of good for him, but then, you know, Born Again happened, and like, is Karen good for him? I don't know. But then she is kind of a safe bet once that's all sorted out. So when it's just a regular street level person with no costume, it's like, this is great. Now he actually meets someone who does have a kind of a costume. She's got a code name at least. And she seems like just a really lovely person. And she's deaf. So her perception of the world is different. And in a way, they kind of find common ground. But she's connected with the Kingpin. And the Kingpin feeds her with lies about who Matt Murdock is. So yet again, the Kingpin is trying to destroy his life. But the outcome of the story is great as well. Like, it's such a good twist to the whole Kingpin Matt Murdock dynamic. And I think in many ways they could have just left Echo there. Like I say, they did bring her back, and they've done other follow-up stories since. So this was written by David Mack, and he picked up on the character again. And off the top of my head, I think it was issues 51 to 54 of that series, where he paints and draws it, and it explains what happens to her next. And of course she meets Wolverine, because everyone has to meet Wolverine at some point. But this story, if you never read another Echo story, it's fine. But you get such a great story out of this. I've given this 5 stars when I've reviewed it. I love it. I love it. It looks great. It reads great. There's some lovely throwaway characters in it who you literally will never see again. But like, the depth that David Mack gives the characters in this story is so awesome. And watching their relationship build up is just lovely. And you know it's going to go wrong. You know, because it's Daredevil and they're superhero comics, and it's all going to go hideously wrong at some stage. Like, how and why, and will they be able to come out of it? And I love it. It's one of my favorite Daredevil stories of all time.
That's a nice pick. Is that what you thought we would be similar on?
Yeah, that's what I thought we'd cross over on. I'm reading.
I've never read that story.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And if sorry, well, it was something that Enemy of the State. Yeah. If BC Scrub said that, I love that bit in Wolverine Enemy of the State where Enemy of the State, where he's salty that Matt gets so many women. It's true. Wolverine does well for himself somehow, but Matt does as well. It's just, and he's such a grumpy dick, you know. He's so sulky and not introverted, like introspective, but he always does all right for himself. It always ends horribly for them. So
always,
yeah.
Do not hate Matt Murdock.
Yeah, bad idea.
Nice pick. It's funny you mentioned Daredevil, because that was going to be one of my picks. Different.
No way.
object of his affection. Yes, a different lady in his life. So last week during our incoming, I yes, I did. I picked Hulk Gray because
Hmm.
I always mention Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb, and came to mind this story of Daredevil Yellow, which for those who have read the Kevin Smith story that you just had mentioned, this is him talking to Karen the whole time, remembering her. And it's so charming because like we had said before, there's that awkwardness of Tim Sale's art, but he also gives it a sort of romantic Archie era vibe in the artwork at times. But there's this one shot of Daredevil in the city of New York using his senses as heightened as he could possibly be to try to hear her, to try to get her heartbeat. The way that Jeff Loeb is able to write, he's not overly verbose in these stories, but whenever he does get the characters to speak to each other or he captures something personal, he does it with just the right amount of, I don't know, verbal real estate, right? His economy of
Yeah.
words is just right. And he really gets to the heart of the relationship. And I feel like Daredevil Yellow is a really good snapshot of the beginnings of these characters, but also the beginnings of very important relationships in their life that kind of redefine the course they take.
Mm.
As far as love stories go, this one's really touching, and it's a little bit of a sadder one. It's not all about happily ever after, but it is that feeling of at least having once loved
Yeah.
is just as important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice choice, man. That's a
That's
really
my
nice choice.
devil pick.
Sorry.
I agree.
Do you know what I'll say before I do the next one? I've got an honorary mention.
Talk to me.
I wanted to drop this in, and the only reason I'm not including it, so this is Undying Love from Image Comics. It's written by Daniel Friedman, friend of the show, and the art,
Friend of the show, Daniel Friedman.
co-written and the art is by Tom Coker, and it is one fine looking story. The only reason I've not included it is because it's volume 1 to Daniel Friedman. So this is a copy he really kindly sent me. Just, yeah, really sweet. It's a great story. It's the love story element isn't quite there for what we're doing tonight, but I wanted to mention it just because like there's a lot of scope in this. I'm really hoping they do a volume 2 because I really want to see this continue. The art in this is incredible. I want to check more
nice.
Tom Coker stuff. Anyway, moving swiftly on. My number 2, it's Fables. Now,
Nice.
there are numerous love stories in Fables, numerous love stories, and the most obvious one is Snow White and Bigby Wolf. Bigby's essentially your main character. Bigby and Snow White are both, I think, essentially the main characters. Following their relationship, I mean, straight away in the first volume. So this volume 1 collects the first 5 issues, and there are some issues with how they approach each other, and she's not a big fan of him, but he clearly likes her. And then some situations develop where they can kind of get a bit closer, but there's always like a little obstacle. So it's written by Bill Willingham. It's beautifully written by Bill Willingham. Like his character work in this is incredible. And even though there's so many characters to choose from, everyone is defined really nicely. The art's by Lan Medina, who did the first 5 issues, and afterwards Mark Buckingham predominantly produced the art. But this love story's kind of got its seeds, so to speak, in volume 1, or however you choose to read it. It was probably part of Compendium 1 or whatever. God, they might omnibus it. What if they omnibus it one day? But by the time they get to Storybook Love, even then, so this is book 3, and I think that's around about, so that's issues 11 to 18, and that starts to delve into it a little bit more. But every time they hit like what should be the beautiful moment, there's something that's not quite right. And in many ways, like it just makes it feel more real, because even though they're both fairy tale characters, they're very human. I mean, he's essentially the wind. He's an element. He's a man that can turn into a giant wolf and can, he's the wind. What was he? The North? Oh, that might be a reveal. I don't want to say too much, actually. But following their relationship is fantastic. And like, it's difficult to just pick one story in something like Fables, because if you're going to read Fables, you kind of need to read it from the start and keep going. It's one of those things with like a more independently written book rather than a superhero title. So honestly, if you've never read it, it might sound like, oh, is the whole thing a love story? Like we said, everything's a love story. And the characters are so well done, though, that you will stick with it. It's a fantastic book. I think people have kind of stopped talking talking about it at the moment, even though they tried to relaunch it. That sort of fizzled, and I think there were some legal issues, but I'm not going to go into that here. From a love story perspective, Fables is a great shout. And actually, I have to credit our producer, Misha, who suggested this and reminded me of this, because
Nice.
yeah, I'd forgotten.
Shout out Misha.
Yep, there we go. I'd forgotten. She went, can I make a recommendation? Fables. And I went, oh my God, that's such a good suggestion. So that wasn't me, but I want to credit where credit is due. But Fables is a fantastic choice.
Excellent. That's really, really good. Nice. All right. DC, I find I'm much more aware of long-lasting relationships within DC Comics, and one of them is Black Canary and Green Arrow. Right? That's just a classic.
Uh-huh.
And there's plenty to pick from there. But for those who know me, know that I'm also a big fan of the Mike Grell stuff. And Longbow Hunters is a great example of an early great example of, I think, where comics would be headed as far as like the adult side of the relationship, especially with these weirdos who put on costumes and fight crime and are part of the Justice League, et cetera, et cetera. Some people might criticize it, but this is the story where Dinah Lance is sexually assaulted. I don't want to get too much into how bad or whatever it might be, but it really puts the relationship to the test in the sense of understanding the danger that they're constantly in, but also the love, the intensity of the love that they have for each other, protecting each other, wanting to be together. And there's a very famous conversation that they have. I guess you could say it's their pillow talk, where she says that I'm in love with you and I want to have your children. Like, I would want to have children with you, but I'll never have children with you because I don't want orphans. Realizing just how passionate their love is, but also how dangerous their life can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a good example of when you can kind of break down the characters, and yeah, it's full of adventure and full of ridiculousness, and a guy dresses up as an archer and shoots arrows. And the cool thing about Mike Grell's take is that he takes away all of the silliness. He really, really strips him down to being like a vigilante. Like, is he even a hero? But you feel his fight for justice is so like on point, pun intended. I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of that series in the second omnibus, but that first one, it starts off with Longbow Hunters. It's a very easily accessible book to find. It introduces some very key characters to the character of Green Arrow, but the stakes are high. His anger is justified, but also the love that him and Dinah share. You can understand like the crossroads that a lot of these characters find themselves in.
I love Black Canary. Like, I love that character. And even the way she shows up when she first shows up in Justice League, it's just like the cover is so ballsy. It's just them all like defeated on the ground, and it's just one of the side of her leg, and I think one bent knee.
Right.
It's just there's something about her whole deal. I just think she's brilliant. And following her in Birds of Prey as well, just really, really falling for that character completely. So yeah, I'm really, really glad. I was hoping you'd choose something with Black Canary and Green Arrow because I don't know it as well.
Yeah, that's and the ongoing series after that, if you stick with it, it really digs into their relationship more as adults instead of that sort of like typical. It feels like a Vertigo comic.
Yeah.
That's a better example. A Vertigo comic where it's adult oriented. They're swearing in it. This is a 1980s comic that is not for kids. It is not meant for the spinner rack. There's violence, there's killing, there's sex, there's real live news. It's an interesting take on the character. Very, very fresh. And it starts off, stakes are high. Very, very fun. Interesting love story. Dangerous love story.
Great choice. I did. Funny enough, I will shout out Rosie from the Discord group today because she was sharing her shelves, and I saw that she's got those 2 volumes, and it made me just go like, "Damn it, I haven't got those books yet, man." So yeah, thanks again. Double reminder. Now I need to get those books.
Is it time for a
It's
commercial
time.
break?
Yeah, I think it is. I'll hear the news. So, welcome to the news section. New to the Omniverse Comics Guide, my dude. A couple of events and crossovers. So we've got the return of the Amalgam Age of Comics, which I did mention last week, but I think it was fresh on. That is the second run of Amalgam titles, the Marvel DC mashup titles. Unlimited access has literally just been added about an hour before we went live. That is one of the sequels to Marvel vs. DC. We've also added Marvel vs. DC Comics reading order. It's all the Marvel and DC crossovers in chronological order. So not the order they came out, but the order they kind of take place in. Pod and video. We've got the collector's item special with Xander Cannon. It was great. Amazing. He was lovely. He made some great suggestions, some surprising suggestions. I had a great time doing that. I'd happily have him on again. Incoming for March 2024. Last announcement is that Showmasters Comic-Con Spring, the Olympia in London, on the 2nd to the 3rd of March 2024. The Omniverse Comics Guide will be representing... Does that work? We'll be representing, and Misha and myself will be going. We'll have a stand. We're going to talk to people. We're going to show them the website. But what else do we have? We got some new merch, including shirts, prints. You can jump on and get a subscription to the Omniverse Comics Guide at a reduced price as like a Comic-Con special. And if you do, there are some freebies. There will be a prize draw and stuff. So come and have a chat. Come and have a chinwag.
Check out the omniversecomics.guide and go to the cons that Dave is going to be at. It'll be worth your while. If you're in the Greater Toronto area, come look for me at Metro Toronto Convention Center, March 15th to 17th. I'll be there at the Toronto Comic Con.
If you're in the area, I'll flash Eric's address up on the screen. You can just go and knock on his door.
Let's come check out my bookshelf.
Have a peruse.
Dave, talk to me about your number 3 pick.
Okay, my number 3 for this evening. If this does sound like a repeat, I did mention this in an episode a little while ago. I think it was the Life-Changing Comics one, but I didn't go into detail on this particular bit. I said that it was quite an emotional roller coaster. Part of the reason why it's an emotional roller coaster is because of all places to find love stories, you would not expect it from Transformers. And if you do, you'd expect it to be the humans. It's not. There is a very, very sweet relationship between Tailgate, who's a little white car, who's a bomb disposal expert, who has his legs blown off. Because he's a robot, they can, mechanoid, whatever you want to call him, don't want to be racist, he can have them replaced, but he's looked after by essentially one of the worst villains they've had in that universe, who's Cyclonus, who was one of Galvatron's lieutenants. So if you've seen Transformers the movie from the 80s, you may recognize the name Cyclonus. It's that guy. But he's gone through all this stuff in the previous storyline in phase 1. Now it's like a redemption arc for Cyclonus. But he's very scarred, pretty broken individual. You know, the guilt from the stuff he's done, the thinking he's not worthy. He's very, very quiet, but he's very present. And there's a great sparring match as well between him and Whirl, who's the one-eyed helicopter guy. I don't want to get into stuff where people are going, I don't know what you're talking about anymore. But there's a lovely...
Where's the love?
Where's the love, man? So in this, well, for me, it's this volume, which is volume 5, phase 2 of the hardcover collection. But it's in More Than Meets the Eye, Transformers More Than Meets the Eye number 3. This starts to build up. They introduce Tailgate. Cyclonus helps him. They're essentially roommates. And then this relationship builds between the two of them. And it's a very strong love relationship. But Cyclonus can't express himself in that way, and Tailgate's very free in terms of how he expresses himself, and he's trying to bring Cyclonus out of himself, and Cyclonus is like, I don't even deserve that affection. So there's so much guilt in him, and it's just great watching those two characters try and find a middle point. And it builds to this great moment, not that it ends here, but it builds to this great moment in issue 21 where you think this is a real telling moment. And you don't know which way Cyclonus is going. Is he going to give in to his old ways and just like, no, do you know what? No, I'm the bad guy. Or is he going to find a way to deal with what's going on? I don't want to spoil it. It's very hard to talk about without spoiling it. But More Than Meets the Eye, as I've mentioned before, is a fantastic series anyway. But the last thing you expect in that series is a love story. And the weird thing is there's another one as well with Chrome Dome and Rewind. Again, this might mean nothing to people who don't read Transformers or know much about them, but they handle these things so well. There are a lot of characters to play with here, but the relationships are very real and very human, and that's what makes them so good. And I think a part of it's that unexpected thing where you're kind of going, this is just robots punching each other, right? Like those Michael Bay films, the Michael Bay films with the explodes. Like, no, this is character work. This is like, it's when it's funny, it's hilarious. When it gets you in here, it really hits hard. It's Transformers more than meets the eye. The relationship is between Cyclonus, long-standing, fairly famous character, and Tailgate, who's a lesser known character, and it's just great to watch these two characters grow together. That sounds really cheesy, but it's true.
Top 10 love stories. Yeah. Who Omega Bread wants to know who is the writer on More Than Meets the Eye.
Excellent question. I'm such a bad person. I'm really sorry. Give me 1 sec.
Terrible.
Dude.
The worst.
The worst human being on the planet. I always forget.
One of the worst all time.
So I love it. I love his writing on this, and I can never remember. I never get his name right. But it's James Roberts, and the art's by Alex Milne. So Alex Milne does incredible Transformers design. Like it's he's so good. James Roberts' writing on this is some of the best writing in any series I've ever read. It's great stuff. And it really carries on. You can see that he was a fan of the Marvel UK stuff from the 80s. You can see he was a fan of that. He takes that, though, and he modernizes it. He modernizes it. It's slightly meta without being pretentious. It's very clever. I can't speak highly enough about it. So that's the problem, I think, when people are going, yeah, but man, I want to read the Image stuff. And I'm going like, great, I'm not going to, I don't want to put anyone off that. But the best stuff has been. I can't see anyone topping this. It's so good.
Nice pick. That did not expect robot love to be included in the top 10. That's good.
Gay robot love, really.
That's what I'm talking about. That's true.
It is.
Nice pick. Okay, back to the DC well that I've been pulling all these stories from today. These 12 issues, again, very accessible, easy to find. Man, this one here gets me. Tom King, Mr. Miracle. Mitch Gerard's on the art. If you haven't read this, give this a try. It is so good. And there's a scene, just to kind of spoiler, but just to kind of whet the appetite. There's a scene of Big Barda and Scott Free, who are married couple from the Fourth World, Jack Kirby's Fourth World. Him and Big Barda have this amazing rebellious love story where they escape and do whatever they can to be together. That's the premise of their whole relationship, right? Being raised in hell, but finding love with each other. And there's a scene in this book, an issue, where they have a very, very serious husband and wife, not a bad one, but a very serious husband and wife conversation while going through a gauntlet of death-defying traps that they have to escape. So there's a lot of fun reading it, but then while you're reading it, you're getting real conversation of thinking ahead for the future and what could a family mean and all these different aspects of their lives together. It's a very heavy book, of course, because like many Tom King stories, it deals with post-traumatic stress and different aspects of mental health, but it really works in the context of Big Barda and Scott Free's history.
Yeah.
What their relationships represents as far as the Fourth World and how it all comes together. And then again, there's the conversation that Orion has with Mr. Miracle that is just so brilliantly done. Highest recommendation of a book, but as far as love stories go, man, this one gets me. This one gets me every time. It's a good one.
Yes.
Really good one.
I love Barda. I think more than any other. No, is she between her and Guy Gardner? It's a tough competition for me for DC's my favorite DC character. Earlier on, you said something, and it made me go, "Oh, damn it! Do you know what? I should have done Mr. Miracle." And then you've mentioned it, so that would have been our crossover if I just remembered.
I thought that would be our crossover. That's the one I thought.
Book. I love that book so much.
It's a high watermark for comic book craftsmanship. It's a really great book. But when it comes to love stories and not just the one that got away or that forbidden love, this is a married couple. dealing with marriage stuff, which is a nice insight. 'Cause a lot of times, it's always the damsel in distress. I gotta fight. I gotta make it back home to my wife. Whereas this one, you're seeing them talk about life or death matters. I'm happy that we didn't leave it out.
Yeah, me
Yes.
too. I'm really, really glad you mentioned it. They've just announced the Absolute.
All right.
So if you like an Absolute edition, that's the perfect book. 5 stars. 5 stars.
Yeah. Dave,
Okay.
number 4.
Again, apologies if this feels like a repeat. This was in the top 20 of 2022, but I cannot stress enough how much people need to pick this book up. It's Always Never. I was going to say what the original title was in French, and I didn't write that down, and now I don't remember. So, I failed French. I got an E. My name is French. I can't speak it. Deal with it. All right? It's called Always Never. I can say it with an accent if you want, but that would be horrendously offensive as well, so I can't win. I look how lovely that cover is, man. Like the way that the umbrellas make a heart. It's really sweet. But that whole sweet vibe goes through this. But what an awesome cover that is. It was the cover that made me get it. It's so beautifully drawn. It looks like it's one of the finest French animations you can see. I don't know if this guy works in animation. I haven't really looked into that. But what's great about this is it's a love story about two people who should be together who just can't get together. But it opens with them together at the end. So it's told in reverse. It's almost like Memento.
That sounds brilliant.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's so well done. And you know what's going to happen because you're reading it backwards. But there's still... It keeps you hooked. So it's done in little chapters, and each chapter jumps back in time and jumps back in time again, and you find out how they got to the place they are. And it's just... The art is fantastic. Like, it's so nice. The colouring is just... Oh, I'm colourblind, man, and I can appreciate how great this colouring is. It's hard to talk about it any more than that without spoiling it. It's not overly long. It's a done-in-one graphic novel, originally in French,
beautiful.
Released by Dark Horse. In English, go grab it. It's fantastic, and it's one to read and read again. You won't be disappointed.
5 stars. That looks like a classic album cover as well. It's a beautiful looking book, man. Nice pick. Yeah, that's a great pick.
Thank you.
All right. My number 5 is going to go back to my, my comic nostalgia. And I had mentioned at the top of the show before we went live that this past weekend I had got a chance to see Superman the movie with an orchestra along with it.
That's so cool.
And it was amazing. And it just rekindled my love for that movie, but also just for Superman. And when it's done right, like it was such a magnificent movie. I feel nothing's topped that as far as superhero films go. And I know that's like, oh, gee. But it's something that no one had done it before. So it wasn't like you had things to kind of base it off of. It was someone's first attempt to try to pull something like this off. And the relationship between Superman and Lois is always, for me, like the comic book love story, right? For me.
Yeah.
Superman and Lois. And of course, it was classically the will they, won't they? That's Superman's girlfriend winking the gun. She doesn't know that he's really Clark. But in the 90s, during the Death of Superman era, what I really liked about that time of Superman's life or the character was that they had Lois Lane fall in love with Clark Kent. They didn't go on with her and Superman and the love triangle per se. They stopped that and they said, you know what? Let them date. Let's see if Clark Kent is enough of a suitor for Lois. And as the book goes on in the early 90s, they do have like a pretty good passionate romance to the point where he proposes to her and then explains like it is me the whole time. But during the Death of Superman time, there's that very spoilers. There's a book called Death of Superman. He dies at the end. But before he goes into that final battle, and spoilers, he comes back to life as well.
That's not in the title.
In the title.
Actually, it is, because the omnibus is Death and Return of Superman, isn't it? Like,
yeah, right. So I'm not really giving any of the plot away too much. But
there's
the moment where he grabs Lois just before he goes and fights Doomsday for that last punch. And he kisses her. And he just says, no matter what happens, just know that I'll always love you. And throughout the story, there's these replacements that she's desperately wondering if he'll ever come back. His body's gone missing, yada, yada, yada. And there's these fake versions of him, and she just knows, like, that's not the guy. And then the guy with the long hair and the black suit and the mullet and all that kind of stuff, he says to her that same line that he mentions before he dies, right? And there's this panel right here where he says, no matter what, it almost Dan Jurgens almost recreates that panel. None of these things are the love story I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is
what
the
a build
moment.
up.
What a build up. The moment I'm referring to is when the story is pretty much done and Superman's defeated the cyborg Superman that's been, the bad replacement. And the first thing Clark does when he gets his powers back as Superman and is able to fly, he flies to Lois's apartment. And he just doesn't say anything. He just grabs her. Adventures of Superman number 505. She hears a tap on the window. When she opens the curtain, he just sweeps her off her feet. And it's the long form of what gets to that moment in issue 505. It's not the whole premise of that issue, but it's that moment where they finally are able to embrace after having been apart because of death.
Are they married at that point?
Right, death is separated.
Did you say? Or they?
No, they're not married. Yeah, they weren't married at that point. So it was still just in their engagement. And for all intents and purposes, he was gone after they had almost gotten it. And the first thing he does is go to see her when he saves the day. And it just was like that. You can hear the music play, as it were, right?
Yeah.
When when I would read that as a kid, I would always hear the Lois Lane and Superman, flying theme. So I always think of that kiss between them after having been apart for so long to finally embrace, and he's back for good. And then from there, of course, they go and they get married and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, issue 505 as a kid, I was just, I'm like, he's really back because Lois knows it's him. And that love story between them has always been like my favorite. When going back and reading those issues as a collector and putting all the pieces together that I never got to as a kid, I always appreciate it's like, man, they really went for Clark and Lois dating and her meeting his parents and him not using the powers to fool her. It's just his character that she fell in love with.
Yeah.
And then after that, he says, I'm actually Superman. His death would mean so much more than just her losing the guy that, the dream guy in the sky that I'd love to be Superman's girlfriend. In this case, it's like, no, I was Clark Kent's lady.
Yeah. And
he happened to be the Superman to the world. But when it's all said and done, he always wants to go back to her. Nice. Which is, that's a love story.
It's great.
Take it away. Number 5.
Okay, taking us out tonight. I'm going to follow up on what I was just saying actually about weddings. For the most part, weddings in comics are very rarely like great issues. I mean, there are some, and people probably go like, yeah, but what about the Reed Richards, Sue Storm wedding? I mean, it's classic territory, isn't it? But I don't know if that was the first to do this. I don't know how many weddings they had before generally in comics, but it always tends to be they're going to have the wedding, the bad guys turn up, they kind of ruin the wedding, and then you finish the wedding anyway, and they're married and everyone's happy and blah, blah, blah. That's the pattern. It's tradition. But I'm not that bothered about wedding issues because you kind of know what's coming. Now, my last choice for tonight is a wedding issue. It's from the Hulk, of all places. So I've got it in this volume. Nice. It's volume 3 of the Incredible Hulk by Peter David, Omnibus. It's available in Epic Collections as well. It's from Incredible Hulk 417 to 418. What I've chosen, and this is one of the great things I think about support characters, and you can see how a lot of the time in comics, your main character is almost in amber to a degree. Like Spider-Man always has to be a failure to some degree, but his support characters always evolve more than he does, because something has to, and it can't be our main character. In this one, it's Rick Jones. So Rick Jones is a long-standing character in the Marvel Universe. He's pretty key for just a regular guy. He was largely the reason why Bruce Banner became the Hulk. So he was his sidekick for a good chunk of time. Then he was friends with the Avengers, and he became Captain America's sidekick as a new Bucky, which seems kind of oddly inappropriate in hindsight. We're like, yeah, my first Bucky died. Want to be Bucky? Alarm. And then he became Captain Marvel's sidekick in a weird way because they changed space and blah, blah, blah. So he's been all over the place. Friends with Rom. Who doesn't he know? In this one, he's back being buddies with the Hulk. he's met the Grey Hulk's ex-girlfriend, Marlo Chandler, and this is their wedding. And they've been through literal hell. Well, not literal hell, but they've been through a hell of a lot to get to this point. Don't want to spoil too much because, again, this is such a great run. And this is volume 3 of a chunker. Like, there's a lot to get through. So to really, really appreciate everything they've gone through, read the whole thing. It really starts to delve into it in volume 2. Marlo's introduced in volume 1 of the Omnis. But yeah, when she's brought back in as a character, she's with Rick. And it's a build up to this moment. So the art is by Gary Frank. It's written by Peter David, the incredible Peter David, one of my favorite writers of all time. And this is their happy moment. And he does this thing. Peter David is a rug puller. That's what he does. So when you think it's going to go one way, it goes a different way. And there's all these really nice, subtle references that if I mention them in here, it will spoil them. But there are lovely little jokes for comic fans and for long-term readers and little payoff moments. And it's not what you think. It's a great, upbeat, happy issue. It's really funny. And it's a great way to just essentially put at least a cap of some sort on their relationship, while it then lets Bruce go in a slightly different direction after that point. Great support characters. It was lovely to give them a payoff. Obviously, things pick up a little differently further down the line when they're both in the Janice Bell Captain Marvel series, but that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, Incredible Hulk 417 to 418. It's lovely stuff. Great wedding issue. I think it's, people might go, no, it's got to be a Fantastic Four. Annual number 3, I think, is the best wedding issue of all time. No, for me, it's this one. It's just such good storytelling with some great characters, and you actually genuinely feel happy for them, and you actually care.
There's a lot of real estate to play with here when it comes to the relationships within comics. There was one couple that I really, really wanted to find a key story to recommend to people. And I'll just give my one alternative. And just as a, not the caveat, but like editors know, I know I didn't include Wally and Linda West and Barry and Iris and Mary Jane and Peter, not because there isn't plenty. I just wanted to do stuff that I could list off the top of my head as well as I could without trying to, sift through. I look behind you on the Ultimate Collection, the Spider-Man stuff, Ultimate Spider-Man.
No, dude, it's funny. There's so many things that you've said tonight that's made me go, oh God, I've just remembered another one. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, exactly.
But there's
plenty of stuff to.
We'll come back.
Yeah, we could do this. We'll come back to it. But the one that I wanted to, that I'll say as an alternative was Black Bolt and Medusa.
Ooh. Did you have a story in mind? Or was that the reason why?
That was taking place. Yeah, I couldn't pinpoint it to give it a fair recommendation. But I really like the dynamic of their relationship. Whenever I see them in an Inhuman story, or if it was the War of Kings, seeing how the trust and how she understands him and knows what he wants her to say. Mm-hmm. And I just love that sort of thing that they've got. Like, where does that thing come from that makes them so sure of them? Like, he can, you really just, anything she says, he never is like, no. She can speak on his behalf so well.
He can't do that. So her brain will explode. No, that's not what I'm. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, like it's.
You misquoted. Oh,
I just. And the thing too is that they're not like this, and I think they've been divorced in comics. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I like the fact that they're not this burgeoning romance. Or they're married, they're king and queen, and it's such a stable, secure thing within the kingdom of the Inhumans in many ways. Like I just find that dynamic so interesting. But I'll think of a story maybe for next time in regards to Black Bolt and Medusa.
Marvel Man just said their wedding was an awesome read as well, and I don't know when that was. Bad Omniverse Comics Guide guy. I don't remember when it was. Yeah, they've got a really interesting dynamic, and it's really, really unusual.
Apart from the body humor and sound effect breaks, the thing I love most about the podcast is the amount of great comments. Oh, thank you. That's the whole point. That's why we do this.
Great Omega comics. Bread. You guys highlight that I've never read. It just reinvigorates my love for the medium. Oh, dude.
Here's my love for the medium. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's the main thing, right? I don't know a
It's the
lot of the
goal.
crap that people talk about in comics of what they're complaining about, this, that, or the other, because I just would rather say this book from 1973, great read. Check it out, right? It's just better to talk about what you like instead of what
Yeah.
pisses you off.
Let other
Plenty
people
pisses me off.
whinge and moan about their shit.
Yeah, I mean, whatever's your taste, whatever you want to stay up to date or whatnot, but there's just so many great
Yeah.
comics throughout the last almost 100 years of their existence in publishing that ah, read what you like.
Yeah, read what you like, and
Enjoy what
actually,
you like.
yeah, make the most of that. I don't see the point when people stick with a title for 5 extra years and hate the thing and slag it off. Just find stuff you like. Marvel Man said he thinks the wedding was FF Annual 18. I thought they were married before then. Maybe they weren't. That sounds right. That sounds right. I think he's right. I think that was during the John Byrne era, because that was when it referred back to the Kree Skrull War stuff on the moon with the two. We'll go into that another day. But yeah, I think he's right. And I have read it and I've totally forgot it.
Yeah,
But that's why you guys are here. Man.
That's why you're here. That's right. And we'll be back with more top 10 love stories for another time. But,
next week,
hope you guys have more love stories.
Every week now.
That's the new podcast. The Omniverse Couple Guide in comics. But I hope everyone had a good time going down our memory lane and our bookshelves of things we recommend. Dave, those were some really good picks. Some of them surprised me. I wasn't expecting Transformer one. That was really good. And of course, don't forget to just go to the Omniverse Comics Guide, guys. Yeah, man. Omniverse Comics Guide.
You'll find stuff.
It's stuff there. And it makes the real thing is it makes reading enjoyable. You won't get lost in all of the confusion that could be comics. You'll know where to go, and it just makes the reading experience that much more fun and involved.
Yeah, we're here to help you through. We're there to help you. Whatever the line was from Ghostbusters.
Well, Dave, always a slice, my friend. Everybody listening on the Twitch, we love you. Thank you for being with us, and those watching on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. Stay cool, everybody. We'll be back next week for another Top 10.